Welcome to this new section of the course on blend modes. Go ahead and open up this project number 6, blend modes, not the final one, but just the other one, so that you can play around with the different blend modes and see how they work. We have seen these before in the class, and when you have a layer selected, you can see the blend mode up here next to opacity. And basically what it is how different layers interact. So it's going to basically make the top layer interact with whatever's beneath it, or whatever layer you choose to change the blend mode to, it will interact with whatever's beneath it. So we have these different layers. You can see we have water, water texture. Let's leave this water texture on, and then also our woman jumping. And I'm going to zoom in here and just show you with the woman jumping, if we change the blend mode to something like darken, you'll see what happens. It starts to blend these layers together. Now, these blend modes are organized into different categories, and you can hover over these blend modes when you open up that menu, and it will give you a preview of what it's going to look like. This first section is the darken blend modes, and they all make the image darker. Lighten will make things lighter. This next section is the contrast. So this is basically going to make it brighter and darker depending on what part of the image is bright or dark initially. You have this next section, which is a comparative blend mode. This has difference, exclusion, subtract, divide. So this kind of combines and really changes the colors as well as plays around with the exposure of the image as well. And then underneath this comparison, there is a composite mode. So this, you can't see it on the screen, it's just being cut off, but you got hue, saturation, color, and luminosity. These have to do with the colors as well and how the colors interact with each other. Another way to scroll through these, which I kind of like doing, is if you have a layer selected and you press the shift button on your keyboard and then the plus or minus buttons, which are on my keyboard next to the delete key, should be to the right of the number 0 on your keyboard, you can kind of just scroll through and see what this looks like. Now, notice though, if I have one selected and I have this woman jumping layer on top of another layer, it's still going to work. Now, if this one is visible though, it's going to change how it looks. Or if this one's visible and this layer is on one half of the image and then this water, let's move this water texture to the left-hand side of the image. That's starting to look pretty funky. Pretty weird, but you'll notice that the blend mode is only affecting this top image and where it is over this bottom image. So as I said in the beginning, it affects this layer that you're changing the blend mode to over any other layer that is visible. So that's what blend modes are, and that's how you change blend modes. In the next lessons, we're going to be looking at some specific case uses for choosing a particular blend mode. Here's a fun one. So say you have an image like this where it's a black logo on a white background. A really quick way to remove that white background is through the multiply effect or the darken effect. You can see that automatically that white disappears, and that's how basically the multiply effect works. Is anything that's white is transparent, and then anything that is lighter becomes less transparent, going all the way down to the darker parts of your image that aren't transparent at all. And that's kind of how you can understand what these blend modes do. And the other ones like screen and lighten do the opposite. The white parts stay opaque and the black parts become more transparent. This will only work for a completely black logo though. If you have something that isn't black, let me find my Video School Online logo. So here's my VSO logo. And I just found this camera icon on a website called iconfinder.com. So if I change this to multiply or darken, you'll see that it doesn't quite work because the color of the logo is not black. It's this teal, which is not completely going to be transparent then. So there's other ways you can get rid of a white background for this object. We've seen that in the past with our selection tools. You can just use the magic wand tool to select the white and then just delete it. But it can't be deleted because it's a smart object, so we have to convert this, or rasterize this rather, and then we can delete that. So that's a quick way to get rid of a white backdrop on a logo that has another color. Now, let me just show you a quick trick too. So say you have this image and you use that darken option to get rid of the white backdrop, but say you want this camera to be white instead of black. You can do that by inverting this layer. To invert the colors of a layer, select it and press Command I. And now, since this has actually inverted the colors, instead of multiply, we will use screen. So if you ever have a layer that you want to change from black to white, you can invert it with just simply Command I. But if it does have a background that you're removing via a blend mode, make sure that you change the blend mode from multiply to screen so that that now black background gets removed. All right, hope you enjoyed this lesson, and we'll see you in another one. Here's a cool trick. So what if we want to make this coffee cup and turn it into something like an ocean cup? Deep, right? All right, so let's open this coffee cup in Photoshop. And we want to add this water texture that is from this other project to this new one that we've opened. We can either go back into our Finder and find that file and add it as we know how to do, or you can simply copy it from this project to another one. So just select that layer, copy it, and then go over to your new project and paste it, Command C, Command V. So you can see now if we scroll through our blend modes, like so, just holding the shift button and then pressing the plus or minus keys, we can see how we can turn this coffee mug into sort of an interesting water mug, but still have some of that texture of the coffee behind, right? But we just want this, the center part, obviously, to be the selection for this coffee mug. So there's multiple ways to do that to create a circle cutout. One of the easiest is to go to our elliptical marquee tool. We haven't really looked at the marquee tool, but it's basically a way of making a selection for a layer that you can then copy into a new layer or delete or all kinds of stuff. Kind of similar to our selection tools down here, like our quick selection tool, but it's for a specific shape. So with the ellipse tool on, there are options up here. Your standard one might be set to this option right here, new selection, rather than add to selection or these options here. And your feathering might be down at 0. I'm actually going to leave it at like 10 right now. But with our water layer selected, I'm going to actually turn off the view of that layer so that I can better see this cup. And starting from the middle of the cup I'm just going to click and drag out. Then I'm going to hold the Option key so that this ellipse is growing from where I clicked, and also hold the Shift key down because I know this is probably going to be pretty much a perfect circle. And so I'm going to get it to be about the exact size of the circle inside the mug, and then using my Shift and arrow keys, I'm just going to move it right over the center of this coffee mug. Now, with our water texture layer selected, I'm going to copy and paste. So let's say copy, paste. Now, if we turn off our water texture, you can see that the edges do blend a little bit because we have feathering. And let's change our blend mode 2. Let's just scroll through them now, see what we like. Ooh, screen. That's pretty cool, actually. Looks like you're drinking a cup of pool water with some coffee bubbles. Also, linear dodge. That looks a little bit more natural. That looks a little funky. Looks like you're drinking some sort of bacteria. And that's looking pretty cool, too. So you can play around with this, but again, just trying to get creative using your blend modes and also these other tools and skills that you know how to use now, like the marquee tool. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in another lesson. Here's a cool example of using blend modes to enhance an image and create this sort of spotlight effect. So first you need to find an image of like this spotlight style or texture like this. You can find these online. Search for light leaks or spotlights or lens flare, that kind of thing. I've added one to the photos folder for Project 6. So go ahead and bring this into the Project 6 project, and I put it on top of the woman jumping layer. So say we want to create sort of effect where this spotlight is shining on her. Well, we can go through our blend modes with this selected, and you can kind of start to see what might happen. First, though, let me change the size of this. So I'm going to make it bigger. I'm going to make it the full size of the frame so that it's covering everything and really shining on her. But then I'm also going to squeeze it. Now, to squeeze this image, if I take this right handle and bring it in, it's going to decrease the size of everything. So I have to hold the shift button down and squeeze this in like this, making that spotlight a little bit more narrow. And even if we make it a little bit taller like this and move it up, that's kind of cool like that. So now we can play with our blend modes and see like the different effects that this will have. You can either do like a shining light like this with one of the lighten blend modes, or with one of the contrast ones. Should look pretty cool, like overlay or hard light, vivid light, linear light. I actually really like that linear light. And maybe you want this to be an angle. Maybe you want it to look like she's kind of like jumping out of this spotlight, like something like that. She's jumping up. Or maybe it's shining this way. Ooh, that's kind of cool. So I kind of like that, and maybe make it a little bit wider, like so that she is completely covered. And this also helps because the very edges of the frame are covered by this image as well. If those edges aren't covered, then you can add sort of like a black shape on the edges to cover them. Let me just fix the rotation. Something like that. It's pretty cool. All right, I could keep tweaking this, but the thing I actually want to show you is you can actually now make some adjustments to the color of this layer, and it will change how not only the blend mode looks, but also the overall image. And so to make an adjustment, we know we can go to the adjustment layer button down here. And for this one, I'm going to choose hue saturation, and I want it to be more of a warmer yellow light. So I'm going to take my hue, drag it to the left, something like so. That's looking pretty good. And then saturation, maybe just go down a little bit on the saturation so it's not as colorful. Now this hue saturation effect is being applied to everything below the layer, right? That's what we've learned before. So both the spotlight, if we turn this off, it's also adjusting the hue of this woman jumping. But I don't want it to affect this layer of the woman jumping. I just want it to apply to the layer beneath it. There's an option for that. So with this hue adjustment layer selected, you have this option at the bottom of the properties panel to create a clipping mask, basically. So this basically means that this adjustment will only be applied to the spotlight layer. So if I click that, you can see that now it's not affecting anything except for the spotlight. And that makes the colors a little bit more natural. And I think for this image, it looks better. There's a quicker way to automatically make sure that your adjustment layer only applies to the layer beneath it. I don't know if it's much quicker, but instead of going to the adjustment button down here and going that route, you can just go up to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and then if you choose one of these, say Hue Saturation, just make sure that this is checked on. Use previous layer to create clipping mask, and that's automatically going to basically do the same thing. And you see here this little arrow on the left-hand side of this layer. That means that has a clipping mask, and it's only going to be applied to what's beneath it. Now, after looking at this, I kind of think like I want to rotate it back this way, just coming straight down from the heavens above. It's pretty cool. So just another case study of how I would personally use blend modes to create a really cool graphic sort of spotlight look. And you can do kind of the similar thing with other light leaks or camera flares like I mentioned. I think this color dodge, that was another one that was cool. And the last thing I'll mention too is if it's coming on a little strong, you can always drop the opacity of this layer itself. So of the spotlight layer, and that helps a little bit too. Okay? Awesome. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in another lesson.